Love can be exciting,
Trust me with this.
even terrifying.
Julie! I love you.
But nothing could prepare you for an experience like this.
What is the truth, Harry?
Miracle Mile.
Listen, I'm just a guy who picked up the phone.
Hello, welcome back to Almost Cult Classics, the podcast. My name is Joe Ramone. With me is my friend and co-host Ryan Lancello.
Howdy, folks.
Today we're discussing Miracle Mile from 1988, a movie written and directed by Steve DeJarnett. This was a movie suggested on Patreon by Tyler. We wanted to throw out to our Patreons to suggest our next episode, and this was one that you saw. You were the one that said, let's do Miracle Mile.
Well, it's been on my list for years. It's always getting recommended. You know, it's just like, hey, this is kind of, a weird movie. It's under talked about. You know, it kind of slipped through the cracks a little bit, and I always found it interesting looking. And
I had never even heard of it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, why not? Let's do it.
So that's why I'm glad we have that Patreon, because people can suggest things that might not be on our radars at all.
And if you are not on our Patreon, what are you doing, people? It's $5 doolaroos a month. It's nothing. It's nothing. You get a ton of extra. I went back. There's like, if you like the show, you're missing at least 20 episodes.
I think there's 40 or so, yeah.
Well, but exclusive to Patreon.
Exclusive stuff, yeah.
Full length, same style, little looser.
That's right.
Little sexier. So
less editing. So all Ryan's transgressions come across a lot clearer.
A little bit. But come on now, people. Don't be cheap. No one likes a stingy person. $5.
They're going into a little like Bill Maher. They're like, come on, people.
Just do it already.
You want to support us on the show, everyone.
But why not? And honestly, it's fun. There's a lot of discussion in there. Me and you jump in. We're chopping it up with all you
it's
chuckleheads. It's become
such a really fun discussion place for us to talk to some of the people that support us, and they're very engaging in the comments. We also have that P.O. box on there, so people send us stuff all the time.
Sure.
And on the Patreon show for this time, we're going to do one of those movies that was sent to the P.O. box, which is Welcome to Marwen.
One we've been talking about, I think, since the genesis of this show.
Yeah, well, we did Used Cars, which was a Zemeckis, and we just kept coming, well, it'll be funny, we'll come back to it.
It's been looming, well.
And we've been avoiding it, but we finally got to it.
So, for $5, not only can you get our entire exclusive Patreon back catalog, you will finally hear us dive into Welcome to Marwen.
Yeah, these two episodes are back-to-back Patreon suggestions, so that was cool we got to do that. And over on the comments on Patreon, I want to read a few. Scott says, a seriously overlooked suspense flick from the late 1980s. But did Mare Winningham cut her own hair for this thing?
Odd hair choice.
Very odd hair choice.
Yeah.
And then Tom says, haven't seen it yet, but it's got a cool soundtrack from Tangerine Dream. Really cool soundtrack in this movie. It felt a little like John Carpenter at times.
Before we jump into another comment from Rory, and I think he's really right. Let's just read this real quick. I bought this years ago during an Arrow video sale on the bargain, knowing nothing about it, which I think is the best way you could be introduced to this flick. So, if you haven't seen it and you're interested, obviously, as usual, this is a spoiler-heavy podcast. Stop! Go watch it. It's 90 minutes. It's quick. It's very, I liked it. I don't know, but we'll get into it. But go check it out. Come back. If you've seen it already, keep listening.
Yeah. It reminded me of a Twilight Zone episode in a way.
Very much so. Well, wasn't that it wasn't the genesis of it, but they were going to use it for the movie, weren't they?
Yeah, so this script was written by Steve DeJarnett, who I think in the early 80s, he was a very hot Hollywood screenwriter, meaning a lot of his scripts were being bought. He was a talk of the town, kind of. A lot of those don't really end up getting made, and Miracle Mile is one of the scripts that Warner Brothers purchases, and they want to turn it into Twilight Zone, the movie, when they were going to make that. They were trying to make that movie for years.
Right.
And eventually it becomes that anthology film, which is remakes of other things. It's such a shame because I want to like that movie, but there's that darkness looming over it.
Yeah.
It does make it enjoying it kind of hard sometimes.
It is what it is. I love that movie as a kid. Really, all of them freaked me out.
It's still an interesting, but it does have that lingering.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's hard not to.
Three people, two children died.
Yeah. But for whatever reason, he just.
By the way, I can't believe there's footage of that.
I know.
That blows me away.
There's a great series on Shudder, the streaming network Shudder, called Cursed Films. And they show I had never seen it, but they show the take where it happened. It's wild. But yeah, Steve DeJarnett comes into Hollywood. He's got a lot of great scripts. This is one that is really hot. It was making lists of like the top screenplays of when it was around. And he ends up, his first official mainstream Hollywood movie that he works on is Strange Brew, which is the Bob and Doug McKenzie movie. And basically what happens there was Joel Silver saw the popularity of Bob and Doug McKenzie, these characters played by Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas on SCTV. They had done a comedy album, and he says, we should do a movie. And he sends them a couple scripts written by Steve DeJarnett, and they hire him to write the movie. And I know we talked about...
Was this an SCTV skit initially?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I feel like, every once in a while, these, like, they would kind of borrow. I feel like they did some SNL things. I swear to God, they did Molson commercials, right?
Most likely.
I think as a kid, I remember watching hockey with my dad, and,
they were
hey,
huge.
hey, Google. I did not care for Strange Brew, man.
You and I met up earlier in the week, and we try not to talk about things related to the show during those times, but you had said that you saw the first, 20 minutes of Strange Brew, and you're like, it was kind of enjoyable.
Because it seemed almost a little meta. Like they were playing with the format. It starts with, the MGM lion,
yeah,
and he burps instead of roars. Then it kind of goes around, and you see the lion with his head through, the thing.
Right.
And they're sitting there with all the cases of beer in front of the map of Canada, oh, hey, it's our movie, a lot of A's.
Well, that's the whole...
I know, but it's a little too... Honestly, I didn't really know these characters too well. SCTV's great, by the way, everything you've shown me. I just found them super, super annoying. And I like Dave Thomas a lot. Is he Bob or Doug?
He is Doug, I believe.
I hate Doug. Doug sucks.
Let me double check that.
Doug sucks, man. They're the characters that are constantly no matter what, they're I didn't do it. It's never, just so...
Rick Moranis is Bob and Dave Thomas is Doug. So the things
I wanted to like it.
The things that I love about this movie are the stuff of the McKenzie brothers at home.
Yeah.
With the parents.
It should have just been a down-to-earth, them goofing around in Canada.
As far as I know, this is what I was able to find out doing research, reading some interviews with Steve DeJarnett, interviews with Dave Thomas. All the stuff like that, the Canadian stuff, them at home, the opening with them making the movie, that's Dave Thomas and Rick Moranis. All of the brewery stuff is Steve DeJarnett, which you can kind of...
Yeah, of course.
Very high concept, and it's about
should have been that.
Yeah. He apparently was inspired to write Hamlet that takes place at a brewery, and that's where all that stuff came into. He was going to direct this movie. He wrote the script, and then they kind of met with him, and they would...
It's funny that you bring that up, because the guy that wrote the next movie we'll talk about, Cherry 2000, he wrote that updated Hamlet.
Oh, really?
With Ethan Hawke.
Huh.
Well, he wrote it. I mean, Shakespeare.
Yeah,
right?
I know,
you know what I mean.
it.
Right.
So what ends up happening is the movie got a big Canadian tax credit requiring that the principal players of this movie be Canadian. So Steve could not direct it. Rick Moranis and Dave Thomas ended up directing it, and as a result, he gets refunded I think there was some kind of contract. So
Right.
the studio ends up having to pay Steve a big sum because he can't direct a movie. He uses that money to buy back the Miracle Mile script from Warner Brothers. And that's how... So Miracle Mile doesn't happen without Strange Brew.
Right.
There's a very...
we've said this before. Sometimes it's just not... You're not in the mood or whatever, but I was just it felt like it was a 3-hour-long movie.
Yeah,
I was
the stuff with the hockey players and the stuff
went nowhere.
The stuff with them playing their own parents and
Hilarious.
really funny stuff, and then with the dog in the house and all that stuff, I love. It just, I think they even admit it. They were like, we didn't really know how to write these characters into a feature film, so that's why they hired this other guy. They were busy with SCTV, and then so you had kind of these two themes that were...
Look, I'm okay with a plot that doesn't make sense, especially in a comedy, but it's just it was okay, now this is happening, and now this is happening, and there's an electric ghost of the old...
It's Hamlet, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. You're not expecting you're going to watch this movie and see Hamlet parallel.
I didn't even make the connection.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So I think they kind of pushed him in a certain direction of how to write this movie, but I think he really ran with that Hamlet idea and so when they came in, their whole job was to try to insert their characters more into the story because they were the only one. He's not even Canadian, this guy.
Sure.
So it's how do you write this movie about this whole Canadian? It's such a Canadian.
I'll say one thing. I was really enjoying how it looked. It's in the 70s when Canada still existed. I'm pretty sure it's gone now. I don't think it's really there.
I love their beer stores.
Yeah.
Where you're just going to walk in and tell them
Yeah,
it comes out.
super
Which
cool.
apparently
They still do that?
that's how they do that.
Huh.
Yeah. So
but it's something about, man, I'll never stop beating the drum on film.
yeah,
I just like how it looks.
even when it's obviously low budget.
Yes.
like that stuff in the opening with them is like the apocalypse. That's another thing. It's got that weird apocalypse connection.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, oh, is the movie going to be like? I'm like, this is cool. They're
Yeah.
going to be doing little goofy skits and like, just being dumb losers, and
Yeah.
then it just turns into this like,
The first 20 minutes of this movie are really strong.
yes,
And
I think that's what,
when they,
Oh man, I just found myself annoyed.
Yeah.
After I was like, all right, guys, like, okay, come on, get it together,
Yeah.
fellas. Like,
it feels very in line with like the Blues Brothers and Cheech and Chong, of these movies about like popular sketch characters that they don't really. Sometimes it works, right? Sometimes you like Blues Brothers. It's so high concept and so crazy. There's so much going on. It shouldn't work, but it does. It comes together.
It comes together beautifully.
It's just so
it's
clear.
plotting. It's just lumbering
Like
from
I
thing to
think
thing.
that if they had just apparently, and again, there was like certain rules who they could involve in this, who they couldn't involve, because it wasn't. They owned the characters, but then it's very strange.
Is
but
Max von Sydow wearing fake teeth?
I think he is. Yeah.
Okay, I'm like, those aren't his teeth.
And Paul Dooley is fun in it.
Paul Dooley was annoying the shit out of
Really?
me. I love Paul
I love
Dooley
Paul
with his
Dooley.
greasy hair in it. That was all right, but it was just, you know what it was? It was a little too. A lot of it was. There's leeway when you're like, okay, it's a stupid comedy, whatever, but it's almost like first take-ish.
Yeah.
Like, hey,
Well, it's obviously
we're
very
pretending.
amateurish.
Yeah.
There's some of that.
I just went, like you said, when it opens with them in their little stupid apocalypse movie, I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
It should be them doing amateurish shit.
I wish they didn't have the opportunity to do it, but if they just would have sat down with the SCTV writers
Yeah.
and just made the screenplay, it would have been a much better.
I'm surprised. I'm like, I'm waiting for Joe Flaherty to pop up. He never does.
Again, there was certain rules that they couldn't
Weird.
do. So
I wanted to like it. I was stunned at how much I didn't like it.
for me, the middle portion is really it drags a bit. I like towards the end when Bob is drinks all the beer in that thing. There's some funny stuff. I like.
There's some okay sight gags.
But
It's
like,
not the
it's
worst.
the Hamlet stuff that's just like.
It's not the worst thing in the world. But man, I was just like, what is going on here?
Yeah, and it's funny too. The movie begins with the adventures of Bob and Doug McKenzie. Like it really sets it up. Like, oh, there's gonna be a bunch of movies, and I think this movie damaged Rick and Dave's relationship because.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what Steve even said, that like he wished he had directed it because he would have been a he said. Rick and Dave were always going to direct it, but he was going to be the official director, which, on paper, and, he would have asserted himself as a director, I'm sure. But he also said he probably would have been a good a buffer point between the two of them. And they ended up, I think they butt heads a lot during this. And
Well, as we learned recently, you're directing as a duo. It's kind of tough.
Yeah.
It's like, and especially if there's no one there to be like, it's not the best idea. I think his idea is a little better, or maybe you both
Yeah.
can find, like. Then you're like, fuck, one of you has to back down, and
it ends up being the only movie Rick Moranis directs, and Dave Thomas has directed a bit, comedy movies and stuff throughout TV shows and stuff. But Rick Moranis, never directed anything else. But yeah, it's a product of the times. Again, I'm kind of thankful for it because without this movie, Miracle Mile would not exist in the state that it exists in. But after that, Steve directs another movie. He doesn't write.
Yeah, it's written by Michael Amareda. It's Cherry 2000 from 1988. Another one that's just it would every once in a while it would pop up on my radar and be like, it's called Cherry 2000. It has that. There was that thing in the 80s. They loved doing the post-apocalyptic dystopia. I don't know if it was all Mad Max influenced or what, but like so much of that, it makes me think of like the Radioactive Dreams, shit like that. You know what I mean? But it looks cheesy. It looks stupid, and I always remember being like, eh. And then I think randomly I caught it on TV one time, and it was like the first 15, 20 minutes or something. I was like, whoa, this is way different from what I thought it was going to be. I love Cherry 2000.
Yeah.
I think it's fucking awesome. We could I think it could warrant its own episode almost.
We could, because I didn't end up watching it this time around.
Couldn't
'Cause
find it.
I couldn't find
a little
it.
tough.
You know what's funny? Not to cut you off.
Oh, please.
Coming back to 80s dystopian stuff, apparently ties in the Strange Wheel a little bit. Rick Moranis had to leave the production early to go film Streets of Fire. So that was another thing.
That's coming up soon. We should really do that.
Yeah. But again, you're right. The 80s, we had a lot of Mad Max. There was very, dystopian...
I have to imagine, too, a lot of it was, the bomb's going to drop at any minute, which we'll get into a Miracle Mile, obviously, but it's that Cold War thing.
Yeah.
It's hanging over your head.
I love this stuff.
Yeah, I think you would have really liked Cherry 2000. The plot is it's set in the year 2017, and America's in this weird kind of balkanized, fragmented like world where something's happened. That's the other thing too. This movie really, I like when you just are dropped into a world and it's not explained. But as the movie goes on, you're getting little bits and pieces of what's happened, what new reality that they're all dealing with. And it's funny enough, I don't want to say it predicts like a Me Too, like, the whole Me Too, we're canceling men or whatever the fuck,
Yeah.
But it gets to this point where there's a very strange dynamic between men and women in this post-apocalyptic future, and they're going to bars and they're basically like meeting each other at bars with a lawyer, and it's like, well, I'll do this if you do that, and is there an oral clause? It's like, I didn't agree to an oral clause. It's excellent. Yeah. So the whole thing is like, it's the dynamic between men and women is totally fucked up, and you have people now taking advantage of sex bots essentially, and that's what Cherry 2000 is. Cherry 2000 is like a rare, like high end sex bot, and your main character here, who is Sam Treadwell, has one. And one night while he's, making relations with it, the dishwasher is overflowing and they're on the kitchen floor rolling around, and she shorts out. And he can't find another replacement for it. And he really likes his Cherry 2000. It's, he's in love with it. So he finds out from a guy who kind of works on these robots that in Zone 7, which is, kind of the, you're far out in the wastelands.
Okay.
There's like a robo graveyard essentially in Vegas where it was. 'Cause I think he was in Anaheim.
Okay. This just sounds like AI, that scene where they go to like
a little bit. Yeah.
Isn't it like, it's like a monster truck rally, but they're destroying robots, isn't it? Yeah.
Flesh Fair or
I think something like that, yeah.
I should watch that again.
I should too. It's been a while.
But it's just a really, and that it's his journey into the wasteland with this tracker played by Melanie Griffith. Who's good in it.
But you're not a fan of hers, usually.
I just think she's always been utilized poorly. And, she's good in this.
Okay.
But it's a stylish movie. It's super well directed. I think the action is good. I think all the little bits of detail are really good in it. Like, there's this one guy who's, like, kind of the leader in the wasteland of this strange group. He's Lester. And he's, like, a real positive kind of health guy. And all his, like, crew wear, like, Hawaiian shirts. And they have this weird kitschy, like, 50s, like, post-war, like, hokey dokey, like, here we go. But they're all killing the trackers.
Now it sounds like Fallout a little bit.
Dude, it's awesome. It's definitely...
Okay.
I have a feeling this movie's probably influenced a lot of people, but no one... it's so forgotten.
It's kind of his career.
Yeah, it's got Ben Johnson in it as like this old tracker out in the woods, or in the desert. I won't go too into it, but man, I really, really recommend this movie. I thought it was excellent. It's funny, it's interesting, it looks great. Once again, film, no CGI, great set pieces. Maybe I haven't done it on Twitter in a while, like images.
Oh well, yeah, that's what I was
I'll go through it.
That.
I'll do a whole images thread for this because I really like it. I think it's super underrated. It gets terrible reviews. I don't know why. It's fun. Big recommend for Cherry 2000 for me.
I do plan to check it out, and I will, but just again, I couldn't find it. Plus, here's a quick tease. Watching Welcome to Marwen.
Which we will be covering on our Patreon for the low price of $5 a month.
But it made me want to retire from watching films. So
I got to stop watching bad movies.
I know.
It's killing me, man. I hate it.
It's fun sometimes when we get into it.
Sometimes. What's that Patreon link?
That's going to be patreon.com/almostcultclassics. He just directs that. He doesn't write Cherry 2000,
right.
Which again, it's an interesting choice because he was getting known as this, really good screenwriter. Mm-hmm. So the fact that he ends up directing this movie, but anyway, so in between those, that's when he had gotten the rights back to his own script, and he puts together Miracle Mile, which again, it had bounced around a lot. It was a very beloved screenplay. But for some reason, they just couldn't line up the pieces. It's
Well, I think a lot of people wanted to change the ending.
Yeah.
Not a happy ending.
No.
It's
kind of like, did you ever see Rogue One?
Yes.
It reminded me of that a little.
Probably the only good new Star Wars movie. I thought it was pretty good. I didn't think it was great.
No.
But everyone dies.
Yeah. It was a bold
Very
ending.
bold.
Yeah, and
you can't go back to those characters because they're all dead. I was like, that's a great... I was happy about that.
That's the thing about this movie that I have to give it credit for. It does a lot of things I don't really like or agree with, but The never knowing what's going to happen next or where it's going. When a movie does that,
Yeah.
there's a movie that I didn't want to cover it on Movie Catch Up because I can't remember the fucking name of it, but it came out this year. It was directed by Jake Johnson. It was called Self-Reliance, and it's just a very high-concept comedy movie, but I didn't end up really enjoying it that much, but I never knew it was going to happen next. And it's so rare that a movie comes across like that, especially one made in 1988. So I have to give this movie credit because for pretty much every scene, I did not know what was going to happen next. Even till the very end, it's so
to the very end, I
atypical
was like, what if he? Because there is a thing where it's like maybe that call wasn't right,
right,
and we'll get into that. But
it's layered with decisions and
the thing is, if you do it right, and I agree with you, I don't think this. Some people said it on Patreon too. Like, it's a great premise. It doesn't fully connect the dots. There's some wonky filmmaking.
Yeah,
I think editing. You're like, what's going on here? Why is this happening? A couple times. It doesn't ruin the film by any means, but
well, because also he has to film this whole thing at night, right? So it's such a hard production because he's losing so many, hours where film productions usually takes place. He can't do that. Anthony Edwards ends up saying he was like getting done at 6 a.m. Like, it was such a crazy schedule for 8 weeks.
And the movie's not in real time, but it essentially takes place, over an hour or two, from like 4 to 5, 6, 4 to dawn. And it feels like it. Mm-hmm. It's tough to capture that 4 o'clock time.
Yes.
If you've ever been out at night at 4 o'clock, it's the witching hour. It's a very strange time. I think it really does an excellent job of capturing that.
Well, it's compared a lot to a movie that does that really well, After Hours.
Sure.
And even in Ebert's review, he says, Miracle Mile reminded me a little at times of Martin Scorsese's After Hours. Both show a city at night, sleeping, dreaming, disoriented, while a character desperately tries to apply logic or it will not work. Mm-hmm. And similar to what you just said, like, After Hours does a great job at capturing that late night when it's kind of quiet, but there's still some energy, some things going on.
It's a weird time.
Yeah, and especially in big cities, it feels different. In the suburbs, it's going to be quiet, but in the city, you get a little bit of energy around that time still.
Yeah, and the one thing, like you were saying, like, it keeps you guessing till the end. The great thing is with a movie like that, and like this, if I could say that, is that you are engaged the first time you watch it.
Sure.
Then if you liked it, the second time, what's kind of going on. So you can kind of sit back and just kind of enjoy it. And there's a lot to enjoy here, visually especially. But the performances are all good. A lot of goofy side characters and stuff. People in and out, different things happening. It's definitely one I'd happily, it's on, boom. You're not going to turn it off.
This is a movie that gets buried upon its release, by the way. It's released on September 11th, 1988 at the Toronto Film Festival, and then May 19th, 1989, a wide release. It opens at number 15.
Jesus.
Behind new releases, Roadhouse, which opened at number 2,
okay.
How I Got Into College at 11, and Fright Night Part 2 at number 14. So, and this is so weird for me to see, but now we're on the box office. See No Evil, Hear No Evil for 2 straight weeks in a row.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
I mean, do you think this was advertising or just no push? Or
I gotta tell you, man, much like you, I grew up obsessing, looking at films and IMDb. It just, this movie there's something about it that just escaped me completely.
Is it because they're kind of, I don't know, hiding it a little bit? Because you look at the trailer and you're like, you get it right away. Let's do a little plot here.
Okay.
So you got Harry Wieshello and Julie Peters. These are our main characters, played by Anthony Edwards and Mare Winningham, who, funny enough, I learned on our Patreon. I had no clue. One of the commenters said this. Years and years, like decades
20
after
years
this,
later,
they both got divorced from their respective spouses and then married each other, which is kind of fantastic.
So there's your happy ending. That's not
exactly
here.
There's your happy ending. But they're in a museum. They don't know each other, but he kind of catches her eye.
La Brea Tar Pits.
Is it the museum for that? Okay, cool.
I believe so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because there's a woolly mammoth in there.
Right. And they kind of just, it's there's an immediate attraction. And they meet up, and that's what the cool thing about this movie is. It's kind of like a goofy little...
I was a little worried at first.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, all right, what is this? Like a fun romantic comedy set against a nuclear backdrop.
Right. And they play it like that. Like, it's a meet cute. Like, he's a jazz tromboner in the Glenn Miller variety. He honestly has like the kind of Glenn Miller look. I think he even says it at one point. He's like, I'm a fucking Glenn Miller ripoff or something. But he has a little performance. She brings her grandfather to come see him. he's like, he's walking her back to her house afterwards.
There's, by the way, there's some word here. A tube steak.
That caught me
What
off
is
guard.
that?
Hot dog.
I know, but
I know it's a penis
is that-
euphemism.
but no, does people call that? Is that like?
I think that was meant to be a joke. I could be wrong. Google tube steak, Joe. See what comes up.
That's I was thinking back to here. It says a Frankfurter hot dog.
There you go.
So the euphemism for a dick began with this being the actual name for a hot dog. I guess
It's not hard to make the connection
No,
there.
it was like when Nothing But Trouble, the Pud Collar.
Yes.
You remember that? That was a fun. Us having to figure out what the hell he was talking about there.
Did we ever come to the
Yeah, it was
conclusion?
a cock ring.
Okay.
Because he's like, I don't know if I can please your granddaughter.
have
And I
cock-
just slip on a Pud Collar.
How long have they been around?
Enough where Dan Aykroyd knew about them in 1991.
I
So
guess. Anywho, so they, the grandfather's there, and then they see the grandmother across the way. Apparently, the two of them haven't spoken in years, but they're still in love with each
15
other.
years
Yeah,
they keep
something like that.
and they live, I guess, and they all live in this like giant apartment complex,
Right.
And she lives with the grandmother, and yeah, the grandfather is still around, but there's kind of an awkward tension there, and yeah, I guess he is. It's never really made clear, but you can kind of put the pieces together. He's visiting town. He doesn't live there, and they make plans.
Yeah, he's at a hotel.
Yeah, they make plans to meet up his last night in town, but she's a waitress at one of the coolest looking sets,
It's fantastic.
Johnny's.
Yeah.
Which also, I knew instantly from seeing it. It's the diner from The Big Lebowski where the dude and Walter are talking about the toe.
Right.
And he starts screaming about Vietnam, and the waitress is like, this is a family restaurant. Like, but it's just, apparently it's privately owned. It's a landmark.
I was going to say, it's a landmark now.
It's just used in, yeah, I know you're smirking already because you know what it's.
What was it used for last?
It's became the headquarters of Bernie Sanders' Los Angeles operations. But yeah, it pretty much exists just to be used in film and TV shows, and I'm so glad it's being preserved because we talk about it all the time when we see diners and movies like this, but it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And there was a part of me very early on where I thought this was going to be the whole movie. Again,
So did I.
It's continually changing what you think
it's
is going to
be
happen.
that, stuck in one place.
Very Twilight Zone
all
type.
the weird diners
Big,
at 4
bold
in the morning.
characters,
Yes,
yeah.
yes,
and
yes.
they're all trying to figure out how they're. But it's not. It does feel like it's almost like a thriller sci-fi version of It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, where it's like character goes here, does this, leaves, interacts, another character, and this might be also why it wasn't on my radar. There's no real at this time big movie star in it, which I respect it for.
Yes.
But because I read it was like Nicolas Cage and Kurt Russell when Warner still owned the screenplay, were trying to push it forward with a big action star in the lead.
Costner might have been.
And Costner, so it would have been a totally different film.
Yeah, it's way better with an Anthony Edwards.
Well, because he just looks like a regular guy.
It's a regular dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hairline is fading.
It could be
he
me
wears
or you.
glasses.
Yeah,
it's perfect. And she's the same way. She's just kind of.
That's
she's
what I
great
like,
for the
yeah.
role, but everyone looks kind of.
She's not a
normal.
knockout. She's
Yeah.
a normal person with a very goofy haircut.
And there's a few. All the character actors in this movie are like that. They're all people you've definitely seen in other things.
Denise Crosby's in there as most of you remember her as Tasha Yar, I think, on Next Generation, which I just finished Deep Space Nine. We'll talk about that on our movie catch up, maybe.
Fred Doku. I don't know how you would.
The cook?
Dokui?
Was he the cook?
Yeah,
yeah, he
He's
was good.
Sergeant Reed from the RoboCop movies.
Yes. Just all the little side characters are really good. Kurt Fuller's in there at the end. He's the one screaming on the roof. I love Kurt Fuller.
He's probably, if I had to line up actors I've seen the most of,
It's a real bummer that never mind, he's still alive. Fantastic. I could have swore he died. That's awesome, dude.
I was like, where are you going with this?
I love Kurt Fuller. I've always liked him. He's always welcome when he pops up, and he's really chewing the scenery here. He's freaking out on a rooftop screaming. I don't really quite know what happened with him at the end, though. You have Olan Jones as the waitress.
There's another
who also played the waitress in Seinfeld. Nothing's finer than eating in your diner.
I love that this movie kind of basically takes place in chapters, where you have the main character Harry kind of pairs up with bold, eccentric characters, and he just kind of moves on and meets more throughout the story. So it's really interesting.
But there's great little idiosyncratic moments in this movie. Beyond the shot, it's very well directed, in my opinion. He really takes full advantage of that, La Brea, Miracle Mile area. But, so she goes to her shift and she said, come back at, I think was it 3? Or no, it was like 1.
Originally, it was 12.
It was
12:15 they were going to meet
12:15, right. So
outside the
she's
diner.
like, look, go get some rest. You have all day. We'll come back.
Well, she also makes it very clear that this will be a very important date.
Yes, indeedy. But he goes back. He's on his balcony.
They'll be banging.
So get your sleep.
Yeah.
So he's having a cigarette on his balcony, flicks it off, goes to bed. A bird picks it up.
Yeah.
And brings it back to its nest, which is resting on an electrical wire for the hotel. So it's, of course.
Which, again, it's not a detail that's needed. It's nice to have. You could have just done like, the power went out.
Anything.
Yeah.
Right. It's like to go that extra little bit to give it a little more character. It shorts out the electricity in the hotel. He does not wake up in time. And not only he's hours late when he finally gets up.
3:45.
Right.
Which, this man must feel pretty confident in how this woman feels about him. The fact that he just shows, thinking she waited around 3.5 hours for him.
Well, what would you do? I would still go. I'd do exactly what he did. I go, do you have her number? Like,
I guess, right.
Come on. You knew I
But
was
he walks
meeting
in
her.
and she's still here. That's kind of the first thing he says. It's like, all right, buddy. All right, come
you
on.
never know. But,
Time before cell phones. I know this was...
Of course, yeah.
You probably love the idea of this. You're Mr. Anti-Technology.
Absolutely. But, just another moment, too, where he comes up in his car and he parks and he kind of bumps a palm tree and rats fall out of it onto his hood.
Mm-hmm.
Just little things like that. Like, why? You don't need to do that. Most movies would just have him park and get out of the car.
By the way, this is the first movie we've ever done a show for that I have no notes, because the plot was so straightforward, and it's super easy to follow. It moves very quickly, and I was so engaged in the movie that I wasn't even taking breaks to write stuff down.
It's a very engaging film.
Yeah.
So obviously he gets there, he's got flowers. He walks in, he's asking, the phone booth outside is ringing as he walks in. Little,
yeah. There's also
minor
a
foreshadowing.
mumbler kind of crazy guy out there.
Yeah. Crazy bum. You're right, man. It really sets it up. Like, here's your characters for the movie.
Yeah.
They're going to be in this diner.
Well, because they're all different, right? You have, I think, is one of them a flight attendant? There's that woman sitting down in a booth by herself.
She's practicing, like, how she'll put on the mask in front of people.
You have government agent lady.
She either works or did work for the RAND Corporation, which for a lot of you guys don't know, they were a think tank. They are a think tank still.
Has a very early cell phone with her.
Yeah, she's reading the Cliff Notes to Gravity's Rainbow.
Yeah.
Looking at stock prices or something.
Again,
a lot of
people, details.
Yeah, a lot of people think Gravity's Rainbow tells the true story of World War II. I'll let our audience figure that out for themselves.
I can't read Thomas Pynchon. We've been through this.
Yeah, I know. It is what it is.
I would also read the Cliff Notes, so I understand where she's coming from.
But yeah, like you said, you got the two guys, the big fat guys telling a dirty joke to the smaller
two kind
guy.
of blue collar worker guys.
You got the waitress. You got the transvestite hooker.
Yeah.
Someone's like talking to her, just another woman, and you're like, okay, because dude, honestly, this is how I would write
and the great
movie.
cook, Robert
Doquy. I would be like, they're stuck here. They're going to argue about what they're doing while they're losing time. That's how my dumbass would have written it.
Well, because again, my brain at that point is like, this is a Twilight Zone type episode, and these characters. It's kind of like, you ever see The Mist?
I haven't seen it all the way through, but I know, yeah.
Yeah, it's the characters stuck together trying to figure out how to survive and that type of stuff. But essentially...
Quite frankly, that's the easier route to take.
It is,
This movie takes the harder route.
He ends up leaving her a message. He gets her phone number from the other waitress that works there, and he leaves her a message. She's asleep. He tells her, hey, I'm so sorry. Here's what happened. I'm here at the diner. Call me back. A couple minutes later, the phone rings, and he answers it thinking it's going to be her. It's not. It's a frantic-sounding caller.
Chip.
Dad, it's me, Chip. How come the phone was busy just now? Jesus. Look, I had to wake you in. It's happening. I can't believe it, but we're locked into it. 50 minutes and counting. Christ, I just can't take it. I can't fucking take it. I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't swear. I'm sorry, but this is it. This is really it. This is the big one.
I guess he is warning him that nuclear war is about to break out. He works in
North Dakota at a missile silo.
At a missile silo. And he is calling who he thinks is his father to make amends and warn him. The only phone call he gets to make, he has just this minute to make a phone call. And he fucks up the area code.
We're locked in. We shot our whole wad. It's happening. It's finally happening. Wait, who is this?
Uncle Leo?
Yeah, that would be, dude. But it's a great, great idea because I mean, he's like, who is this?
Yeah.
Like, you're just a prank, right? You would never think this is real.
Yeah, that's why this government lady character has to exist, because she kind of...
Well, because the guy also says on the phone, he says, like, Thor off, like, RXXXR, he says, like, the code or something.
Yeah.
Like, the author is, some code that signals that, like, this is real.
Yeah.
And then not only that, our main hero here, Harry, hears all of a sudden, what are you doing? Oh, nothing. I was just...
Yeah.
They shoot him. And then, the guy comes to the phone. Who is this? Where are you? Who are you?
Listen, it's probably a felony to joke around on the phone like this.
Who are you?
Who am I? Listen, I'm just a guy who picked up the phone. I mean, I don't know if this is a wrong phone number or a joke or what. What happened to Chip? He was just joking, right?
Forget everything you just heard and go back to sleep.
And then, at that point, you're like, okay, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, is this real? And he
You wanna
kind of...
hear- There's a real quick story about...
Yeah.
Not something quite similar, but when I was in high school, chat roulette was a thing. And a couple of friends and I, late one night, were hopping on, in between dudes' dicks out. That's what you would get. You would occasionally chat with someone in England.
course.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
But one was... I know now it was a prank, but it was a GIF image of someone's feet hanging. And it just had...
that's like a hanging themselves?
Yeah, and it just had like a note that said, "This is my suicide note. Goodbye, world." And like we were like terrified. We thought about it for days afterwards that we thought we had witnessed something.
And that'll
but,
freak you out as a kid.
well, yeah, especially because then when you later figure out that of course it was a prank. But so I can
that's
kind of
good.
see how in the moment you're a little...
Yeah, he's shell-shocked.
Your brain kind of doesn't think rationally immediately.
You don't want to believe it. Mm-hmm. But if you don't believe it, what are the consequences of not believing it?
I mean,
it's
and
getting vaporized.
Getting a 50-minute head start to get out of the country.
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, because he says, we're launching in 50 minutes. In another hour and a half, they're coming back
Right.
at us.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, too. The movie now starts a timer, which is great.
Right.
And like I said, it's not one-to-one real time.
No.
But the clock's ticking.
Yeah.
So honestly, at some points in the movie, I actually did have a problem with that. Because I'm like, you're wasting time. You're wasting time here. Just do the thing. That's where the movie loses me a little bit. But I think the other strengths of the film, it does, it kind of gets over that.
Yeah, because it starts to become, it really does become like almost like it stays one step ahead of you. And you're like going, wait, is it not? Like more people keep finding out about this as the story goes on. So yeah, he comes back in this diner and he starts telling all these patrons what he just heard. And that's where you have, again, this government woman who's from Washington, D.C.
No one believes him at first.
Yeah. And she is able to say that she can't reach a lot of very prominent people that she has to reach in Washington, which is suspicious. And
she also finds out a bunch of them are already, they're suddenly heading for the extreme southern hemisphere, which would be Antarctica.
Right.
Which I could get into a whole Antarctica conspiracy theory, but I will not on this episode. Maybe some other time.
And yeah, I guess she's able to confirm.
Well, I she's clearly taking it seriously.
Yeah.
And then from there, and once again, you have that Cold War thing. So that cook, I mean, he's like, I knew they were going to do it. I knew they were going to fucking do it. He comes barreling out of the back with supplies. And
shopping cart full of her,
So she's setting up a whole thing at the airport, which like we got to get to the airport. We're getting out of here.
Yeah.
There's a spot in Antarctica that doesn't have rainfall, and obviously, if the rain starts falling with nuclear, you got to have clean water.
Yeah.
Or you're done.
Yeah.
So they're off. They're heading to the airport.
They have the truck. Someone steals Anthony's car.
Which like.
Is that just a random occurrence?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, why even bother with that? But they do that.
Yeah.
And then he's in the car and he's like, hey, we have to go pick up...
we got to pick up Julie.
Right. And the guy's like, look, I love her too, but like,
we're not stopping.
We ain't stopping.
Yeah.
So he's like, fuck, I got to jump out. He's like...
Yeah, well, he finds a gun.
Well, he takes the cook's gun.
He takes his gun. And the guy's like, hey, man, look, I'm not stopping. Even with the gun pointing in my head. Like, when we get on this on-ramp, I'll slow down enough you can hop out. So he ends up doing that, wrecks his glasses, fucks his face up, and he's on the street... As again, it's all like very serendipity. This movie,
yeah,
it is very man world where things just connect. We meet another character who's coming up in a car real fast. He points the gun at the car. The car comes to a screeching stop. The trunk pops open. It's full of stereos and electronic equipment.
Yeah.
And I guess this guy is a thief.
Yeah, he's boosting cars and stuff. Yeah,
and yeah, I don't understand how he's able to commandeer him so easily.
Well, he's got the gun.
I know, but it's even like he get them getting out of the car with the gun and leave the guy. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah, you could just say get out of the car.
get out of the car. Yeah, give me the car.
True. Instead, he keeps him in there.
And not only that,
I guess maybe you could almost be like he's a little sympathetic. Like, I'll try to, like, I don't want to abandon this guy, you know, like, he's, who knows? Because you are, if you take the guy, like, everyone you interact with at this point that you don't take with you is dead.
Yeah.
They're marked for death, period.
This guy, by the way, Mike Kelty.
Something like that.
Kelty? I don't know.
Yeah.
Williamson. He's in the first episode of Fallout. So, I don't know. Sometimes feel like people cast people based on other things.
Did you watch this whole Fallout thing?
I have one episode left.
Okay, so you can talk about that on Movie Catch.
Yeah, I can talk about that. But
Cool.
yeah, so that's a cool thing. And he's great. He's kind of just like, he gets him to believe instantly. Like, he's able to convince him that here's what's happening. And they decide they're going to go fill up, get gas, and then they're going to go pick up Julie. I think he wants to go pick up his
Sister.
Right. And then they're going to head to this. The thing that got a little confusing for me is, at what point do they decide to abandon going to the airport and he's going to this building where the helicopters... What?
The helicopter was taking them to the airport.
Okay.
That was the whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was going to drop supplies or something with supplies, or it got a little hard to follow there.
A little bit. But even so,
It's so manically paced. It's just they really want you to feel that.
So it kind of works.
Yeah.
You don't need every little detail. It doesn't need to line up perfectly because it wouldn't.
Yeah.
But they're not really near a gas station, but they pass like kind of a cab stand, which for strictly for cabbies, you know, a gas station. And the night watchman there is played by, most of you will know him as, I believe it was Mr. Blue in Reservoir Dogs, the great Eddie Bunker. Who I actually read his book. Let me see the title here. I can't remember what. I think it's Confessions of an Ex-Con. It's really great, dude. He had a strange life.
He kind of had a lot of criminal history, right?
In and out of jail, like a real juvenile delinquent. He's in a ton of movies. He had this weird connection with like a lot of old Hollywood, like what's the best way to put it? Aristocrats almost. Like he was working for like a woman at one point who, God damn it, I can't remember exactly who. I really recommend his book though, man. It was really, really interesting. But yeah, he's in there. They pay him off. They start to get gas, and then
He just comes out as shotgun though.
Yeah.
Apparently, by the way, I heard that this part was supposed to be, or was offered to Jack Nance.
This part.
I think so. I could be wrong. Maybe it's another one.
And as famously as you just saw, it was the lead in Eraserhead.
But apparently he didn't want to take the part because he had like a day job. He was doing something else.
He's a security guard.
He was a security guard. Didn't want to leave his...
Jack Nance was an interesting fellow.
Yeah. But this scene where the cops come, this is a wild scene, right? So I guess, are the cops tipped off about the car?
It's not a cab.
Okay.
So they're like, what the hell's going on here?
Yeah.
And, black guy too. Not,
Yeah.
LAPD, but...
one guy has a shotgun out.
Yeah.
They come roaring up to the gas station, guns out, and, he's lying about who... This is the guy robbing me. It becomes a whole misunderstanding. Well, this guy gave me $50 to call, all this stuff. He ends up soaking the cops with gasoline. The criminal guy.
Yeah, Wilson, I believe his name was.
Wilson. And... for whatever reason, one of the cops decides they're going to fire their gun.
I don't know why she shot her gun off, but it ignites her.
Yeah.
The other cop comes over like, oh, no, he gets lit
Well, I mean,
up.
his like way to put her fire is to lay on top of her. It seems. I mean, so of course by this point
They burn to death.
they burn to death, and now the gas on the ground's ignited. They're able to quickly get in this cop car, and as they're driving off, the whole gas station explodes. So. Again, at this point in your head, you're like, what if this was a joke? Like, because now it's really starting to
That's
build.
what I'm thinking. Like, people are now dying.
Yeah.
Like, there's real world consequences beyond, idiots fleeing
Exactly.
to the airport.
So
You're right. That's really where it kicks off.
Yeah.
Where you're like, oh, shit.
There's no going back now.
There's no going back.
Yeah. So they decide they're going to take this cop car. He still wants to go pick up Julie. We saw earlier that Julie was taking Valium to help sleep. Mm-hmm. So when he does show up at this apartment building, also Grandma has a shotgun.
Yeah.
Everyone in the city has a shotgun. He can't wake her. She's out of it. But he tells the grandmother what's happening. They put her into a shopping cart, because she's just so passed out. And in the time he's trying to wake her up, I guess the grandmother calls the grandfather.
Well, he had called the grandfather.
Okay.
Originally. He was like, hey, get her up. I'm coming over to
I
get you
see.
guys.
Okay.
It's
Another detail I
important.
missed.
We got to get out of there.
Okay.
I don't think he's mumbling details, too.
Yeah, again, because it's moving so quickly.
Meanwhile,
And-
he's like, Wilson, stay out front. Give me 4 minutes. And eventually, he's
Don't
just
give
like,
him 4 minutes.
Yeah, he's like, I got to go get my sister. He's like, I'm leaving. And
Yeah.
he leaves.
He can get another car.
Yeah.
So
That's what I thought.
That's the one thing I was strange about. It was like, they end up coming down the lobby, and the grandfather's waiting there, and him and the grandmother embrace, and they're like, they say something like, "Oh, we'll meet you there." Or like it's like, wait, what? What do you mean? Like, if you know what's happening, why are you? He takes her out in the cart, and she comes to him. She's like, "What am I doing in the shopping cart?" I like that there's not that. God, I was so expecting there to be that moment of like, well, you stood me up. Like, what am I doing? Get me out of here. I don't want to.
Just immediately.
She just completely is like, oh, well, you could have called. All right. Like, she's like, she understands.
Yeah, she's like, I guess that could happen.
Yeah.
I think she even says that. She's
Yeah.
like, yeah, sounds
That
about
makes
right.
sense, yeah. I really thought she'd be like, what am I? You liar. You was like,
Those are
no,
the-
he was a little late for plans. It's not. Movies sometimes find the need to like just pit characters against each other for stupid shit like this.
Or explain or over. Like,
Yeah.
just move.
No, yeah, just keep
go.
going. You have to at a movie like this. And then Grandma and Grandpa drive up next to them, and they're
They're
like,
aware, though, in so many
Yeah.
words, the world's ending.
Yeah.
And they had made a pact, like, at the end, we'll come back together, essentially. So they're like, we're going to Cantor's Deli.
Yeah.
Getting the greasiest pastrami sandwich ever. We're in love again.
I've never had a pastrami sandwich.
Good.
Yeah,
Pastrami's great.
I've never had one.
It's good. I'll take you to Cantor's.
Yeah, it's just because I think that
When we go out to LA, we'll go to this diner.
I've been waiting for like the right place. I don't want to go and get a pastrami sandwich at like, at your standard deli. I want to go for like a place that's known for their.
There's a couple places on the main line.
Is there
A couple Jewish
I'm
delis.
sure there's places around
yeah,
here.
you get
but
some
I
good
just,
pastrami.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fuck, I can't remember what that one's called. Whatever.
But the this is because we've talked about recently. Like, oh, we'll go out to L.A. Well,
Yeah, we wanna hit some-
You've never been.
Never.
And but seeing like the architecture in this movie especially really makes you want to go.
But one
'cause
thing, man,
it's-
I got an enormous hard-on for Art Deco, and there's so much in L.A. At least,
Yeah.
there used to be. I don't know how it looks now, but...
No, because I was reading about the guys that designed that Johnny's restaurant, and apparently they also designed Bob's Big Boy. So a lot of their locations have been preserved, which is great because
You get the spinning burgers. You have that clock that's spinning. It's just so good, man. And like I said in that, they get that beautiful, strange nighttime thing. So it's all the lights are popping,
Yeah.
and it's got that warm film.
yeah,
Great.
great stuff. So
The helipad's at the top of the Wilshire building.
she still doesn't know what's going on.
He kind of wants to hide it from her.
Yeah, he's thinking that he's going to surprise her. She just thinks it's a fun date idea. She's just like, I just go out to breakfast at my grandparents. We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
And he takes her up to the top of this building, the Mutual Benefit Life building, and is the helicopter? I guess the helicopter's there at this point, and that's where the great character actor, who's still alive,
Yes,
Kurt Fuller,
thankfully, yeah.
And was he the pilot, or he's just one of the people she
he
works
knew
with?
Landa,
Okay.
which was the woman who
The government lady, yeah.
Yeah. And I love how too, like, if you notice when they're getting into the building, these two women pull up with supplies, and they both are holding like automatic
Yeah,
rifles. I wish I gotta get into guns. I don't know guns at all. I was gonna say submachine guns or something, but they're not. I think that's an Uzi.
A946s.
But these characters are never introduced, and they eventually get up to the top. Like,
It's a great story device because now we're starting to realize like it's spreading.
yes,
The panic is spreading, even though just like 10 people know about it. That's enough to.
But this is where this DeJarnette, I wish this guy had. I watched this in Cherry 2000. I'm like, he should have made more movies. Sometimes it
I was
just
reading
happens.
up a little bit about him, what he does now. He writes short stories a lot
cool.
now. He got involved in politics. He was doing a lot of stuff like that. So look, sometimes you can
what a
be
waste.
a
Oh my
guy that's really
God.
passionate. The system kind of fails you, or
It just sucks the way you drop someone in a story, and you don't need to explain it all initially. You give people drips and drabs and little bits, and
Yeah.
let the audience put shit together. But I love those two nutty women with the guns who are like,
I thought this was
condoms.
his-
We don't need those in the future.
I
Like,
thought this was his car, by the way. That's where I thought the connection was going to be, that they had
okay.
stolen his car. But no, it's not. It's
No.
just, again, it's an unrelated event that's just starting to show you that people are finding out about this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's during this last act, that's going to be something that keeps building. You keep seeing more and more people panic. And again, in your head, when you're like, what if this is all bullshit? Which I'm kind of expecting. At this point in the movie where it's at, I'm like, there's no way, there's got to be a twist ending.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, we get up there. Kurt Fuller's like, "Where is this fucking pilot? I promised him money. Like, he should be here by now." And, the Harry character is like, he's like, how you think it's easy to get a fucking pilot at 4 a.m. to fly a helicopter? He's like, I can't believe I even found one to begin with. This fucking bitch Lando. Like, he's just freaking out, all pissed off. And then this is where I'm like, it's a bit of a stretch. Harry's like, I'm going to go on the street and try to find a pilot. And he sees these joggers. And I guess he thinks, well, they could maybe be pilots. He follows them into this odd nighttime gym.
A lot of people begin their workouts now,
Sure,
like they always have it early morning.
Yeah, but he finds a pilot in the
some
gym.
meathead that's willing to.
Huey's, Dumbos, I could fly them all, but you got to give me the cash, man, and I got to bring someone. So he gets a pilot. And then, of course...
That's the cool thing, too. Like, all these characters, if they found out the world's ending, they want to bring along. You got to find that person.
Yes.
So that becomes a big part.
Right.
Everyone has someone they want to get or bring.
And then, of course,
except the cook. The cook is just like, fuck it, we're going.
The logical conclusion is, too, not everyone can go. So the more you're adding, the less chance of anyone getting out. Like, you really can't tell anyone. It's either you or no one.
Yeah.
And that's, that's the weird moral choice you have to make. Anyway, he finds the pilot. He goes, as he's coming back to the building with the helipad, he sees, now Julie's on the street. That's her name, right?
Yeah,
Julie.
Julie.
Okay. She's looking for a pilot for some reason, which, like, that's what I'm saying. This whole pilot search thing wasn't my favorite part.
Yeah, then there's the guy that looks like him.
Right.
They see him, which
but he's like,
isn't him.
He's like, look, here's the cash. Go up there and wait for me. Don't leave without me.
Yeah.
And he has to go now get Julie. He's like, hey, we got to get the fuck back up there.
Yeah. And as they're on their way back up there, they see the police car come careening down the road, crashing into the building.
Well, no, it wasn't the police car.
It was.
I thought it was Wilson.
Driving the police car.
Oh, right. He had the police car at this
he
point.
stole it.
Right.
So it comes crashing into the building, and him and his sister are a little worse for wear. And do the cops shoot them, or is it just they're just wounded from the crash?
No, like the cops definitely set up like they're like, hey, come out with your hands up, blah blah blah. And then, like this is where it gets a little like, what the hell's going on here? Because it seems like now somehow the word's out, and because the cops leave. They just leave.
Okay.
Like they're ready to come out. They're like, all right, we're coming out, because Wilson and his sister die. The car crash kind of just kills them.
Wilson wants what's his name, Harry, to shoot him.
Yeah,
but he ends up dying before he has to do that.
Just kind of dies. Yeah, and as the two of them, Harry and Julie, are walking out, the cops are like, you can hear them fleeing.
Yeah,
and I love there's that great shot too of like the one SWAT guy.
The one guy who comes down,
he just drops to the ground and then runs off.
after the SWAT van. Yeah. So they're like, what just happened?
Right.
You know what?
And now the sun's starting to rise.
Yeah, the sun's starting to rise again.
What were we about to say?
No, I'm going to touch on this. Like, it's so hard to film like sequentially like this and let the lighting be right, but it's starting to do a great job of blending that together.
Yeah,
because it's like you have like a 30-minute window you can film these scenes, and the crew and the cast, gotta give them the credit for coming together like that. Cinematographers, they all must have really worked hard to preserve the feel of this movie.
But you have a cultural understanding of the flash of the nuke. So when that early sun is coming up, it gives it's foreboding.
Yeah,
you're like, like what's about to happen here? And all of a sudden, as the sun comes up, the city's waking up. But it's people fucking in their pajamas running down the street.
Streets,
and it's slow at first. It's just a couple people.
Yeah.
And then you hear some sounds, some screams, some more car crashes, some more sirens. And it's real. The sun's up now.
It's such a great, like whisper down a lane, word of mouth type thing. Where it's like now all these people they're probably waking up to voicemails and that. So it's like, it just spreads so rapidly.
Because who knows? Like, did the diner patrons make it? What if the car broke down and then they're like they scatter and they start telling people? Because that's the thing. It never tells you how.
It's like that Wayne's World, and they tell someone, and they tell, and so on. Yeah,
you never really figure out what's happening.
Yeah,
and now there's utter panic in the streets, and this is where I was like, oh man, what if it's just bullshit?
Yeah, that's what I started to think too.
Yeah,
that's going to be also. There's something to be said about a time period when there used to be the department store glass window with all the TVs playing the news.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that anymore?
It's no need for it, I suppose.
It should be done.
Yeah.
It should be done.
I don't think anyone sells TVs in storefronts anymore.
I know, but I want to go, and I think
you can't go home again, Joe.
It's such a... I think it's that 2012 Three Stooges movie. There's a scene where they're doing that. I'm like, oh, come on.
Yeah.
This hasn't been done in 10 years at that point. Like, no one watches television through the window. It's it might have never existed. I don't know. I don't ever remember certainly seeing it. It might just be a movie thing. I'm sure there was some level of that, but this is like,
I don't know.
I grew
up in the 60s, so I went, no, I'm just kidding.
I hate some of these movies, and this is such a movie thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he ends up, he stops. All these people are watching the television. He breaks the window so they can hear the sound. The newscasters are very frazzled. They don't really know what's going on, and they're like, "Oh, we think there might be. We're waiting to confirm that there's been nuclear missiles launched." So everyone's in a full blown panic. Trucks are on fire. People are. It's so telling how people would handle something like this. Sometimes you gotta be like, oh, this is just a movie, but no, there would be mass panic. Like, people would be. You see a lot of that in events, like people just going crazy.
Mm-hmm.
There is always that percentage of people that can't think calmly that just start panicking.
Right, so the street's, filled with madness now.
Yeah.
And Harry thinks he sees the pilot across the street.
Right.
So he gives Julie the gun, and he's like, go up to get on the roof. I got to go get this guy, so we get up there. It's not him. It's just another gym guy.
Yeah.
But this scene I didn't like. He kind of is like, all right, I got to get across traffic and get to the roof. He jumps on a guy's hood or roof of the car, and the guy starts shooting through the roof. Mm-hmm. Then he follows him and keeps shooting him. Were you that angry that the guy jumped on your roof?
Some people are just looking for an excuse to go lose their mind.
I suppose, but he follows him basically into a sewer, still shooting at him. And I was like, bro, apocalypse is imminent here. Like, don't worry about your fucking car.
Do you think that's a real sewer?
I don't know.
It certainly looks very. This movie is low budget enough where I think there is a lot of great actual location work.
Yeah, I think they shut down Wilshire Boulevard for like at least 2 days to film this sequence, which it is a good sequence altogether. Just that part, I'm like, this is dumb. Like, what's going on here?
But he ends up using the sewers to get back to the building. He goes in there. They make it. Well, first of all, I think they think it's happened because the elevator stops with them in it. And they're
the building kind of shakes.
It shakes. The elevator's one of my biggest fucking fears in the world, by the way, being caught in an elevator.
I was like, oh my God, get out of the elevator.
Yeah. But they think that's the end. They think they're stuck in this elevator. It's going to end. And it keeps going. It opens up. They're back on the helipad with Kurt Fuller.
I guess he's just decided, I don't care. I'm going to do all these drugs.
I'm going to do drugs and drink on top of this roof.
Was he raping that person on the roof?
I don't know. He's just completely lost his mind.
He's losing it up there. And then the helicopter comes back.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, I told you I'd come back.
Yeah.
But why doesn't Kurt Fuller get on the helicopter? I guess he's just lost it at this point. He's lost his mind, right? Yeah. Well, as they take off in the helicopter, the nukes are coming.
They're coming.
They are dropping. There's no doubt about it. It's happening.
Yeah.
Like
multiple missiles and
as most of you probably know already, an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, happens when a nuclear weapon detonates, which will knock out electronics. So,
helicopter.
Knock the controls out, man.
Right back to where we started. It goes down in the La Brea tar pits.
Yeah.
It's haunting.
Oh, man, it's haunting, dude. Because
again, in the back of your mind, like, all of a sudden there's going to be, like, that moment where, like, they're free, they're arrested, something, everything. But, like, the more you think about it, you're like, well, no, the missiles are launched. Mm-hmm. They're stuck in a helicopter in like a tar pit.
Yeah,
I don't see how they're getting out of this one, and they don't.
They don't.
They die.
They die.
Yeah,
it's a nice moment in a sense where he goes, they'll find us together years and years and years from now.
Yeah,
it's a nice thought.
Like a Pompeii thing,
Yes, exactly. They'll find them embracing more than likely. Yeah. But man, the way it's shot, they're in that fucking cabin of the helicopter. The tar is filled. It's not even water. It's tar. Imagine breathing in tar.
You've never been to LA, so you've never seen them. Even looking at it, it's like
eerie.
Ugh.
Yeah, I can see that.
Gross looking.
But it's claustrophobic, man. And like drowning terrifies the hell out of me. Mm-hmm. I think I'd rather burn alive
than drown. I'm also thinking tar.
Especially in tar. That's what I'm saying.
It ain't going to be easy to get in your
last
lungs.
Thing is the taste of tar as it fills up your lungs. Like, as horrific as burning alive seems, I don't want to drown, man.
Tar. No.
But yeah, and then it's over.
It ends. Roll credits. It's
a bold film.
Well, again, I think you're so expecting that this movie is going to switch. There's going to be that twist. And I think when they were trying to push it to be a Twilight Zone movie, that's with the consideration. And that's why no one wanted to really make the movie. They liked the script, but no one wanted to make it because it's such a dark subject matter and because it doesn't have that we just talked about on one of our Patreon episodes, we did the films of Frank Oz. We talked about the reshot ending of Little Shop of Horrors, which originally ended similarly. The whole fucking world getting taken
ended.
over.
Yeah.
And that test screen did not go well. So I have to give credit to the studio here, who is Hemdale Film Corporation, which...
It's a weird one.
Yeah, they were defunct in November 1995, but they did a ton of fucking movies, man. And I have to give them credit for not changing the ending.
I have to
and
think
for sticking with it.
a happy ending or a twist where it's not happening.
I really thought the twist was coming, or like a dream. There's
The
something.
dream would have absolutely
Yeah.
it would have ruined the movie. It would have made everything before it bad.
Yeah.
But maybe it not happening could have worked. But this is a bold choice, man.
a
Like
bold
I said,
choice.
and I think it makes the movie that much more effective.
It does.
Because it's such a standout in that regard.
Yeah.
Because like you said, no one expects it. Like, look, man, this is what would happen.
Mm-hmm.
You're dead. You die in a nuclear holocaust. You are done.
Yeah.
Like, there's no escaping it, really.
Yeah.
And even like extrapolate that even further. No one's making it to Antarctica. It's all for naught. You're not getting to the airport. Say you're on a plane, you're getting knocked out of the air. You're not going to make it.
No one's going to make it.
You're not making it.
I wonder if that's a good point. I wonder
if you started in Tierra del Fuego at the tip of South America, maybe you can make it.
If this movie had been like really successful, right? If this had been like a huge hit, I guarantee there would be a prequel miniseries. Or like that happens. What happens with the people in the truck from the diner?
Yeah.
What happened to them? We're going to explore their journey now. It's like I kind of like that this movie is just exists as it is, because sometimes that you really start to see stuff like The Thing getting the prequels, and it's like
it's singular.
Yeah,
it is what it is. The Thing is the thing. There is no other
but
thing.
You're right. All these '80s movies. Even you ever see Class of '84? It's again, it's a very. It takes place in the 80s. It's about a rundown high school where like they're violent gangs, but it takes on an apocalyptic kind of feeling.
Yeah.
And in the 80s, like you said, there's obviously Cold War threat and stuff like that, but there was a lot of it would manifest in the movies, and some of them were comedies, some of them were dramas, some of them were a lot of sci-fi stuff like this, but it's so entertaining.
Yeah.
It's a great backdrop for a movie. Again, I think we said at the top it's a recommend from us on this.
For sure.
But
Not perfect,
but just how different it is, and how,
despite its faults or flaws,
Yeah.
man, it's good. I really enjoyed
it's
it.
something I'll think about for a while. I gotta see if this is available on physical media, because it might be one of those Blu-rays I would love to pick up. I'm sure there's commentaries and stuff, but
Like I said, this is a classic. If I'm flipping through and it's on, I'm like, oh, cool. Like, I'm not going to turn it off. I'm going to probably, I'm going to watch it.
there is a looks like there's a Blu-ray by the good folks at Arrow
There you go.
who do good work. So
Oh, yeah, duh. We mentioned that earlier.
yeah. So pick up I would recommend picking this movie up, because
it doesn't overstay its welcome.
no, it's
it
also
moves.
I watched it on Tubi. It's currently on Tubi.
There you go.
So, yeah, I recommend it. It's something that was not, pun intended, would not have been on my radar. I wouldn't have been thinking about it. The cast are people that I'm not really super familiar with, so it wouldn't have been something I would have stumbled upon. Like, oh, let me check this out.
You're really right. Names would have ruined it too.
They would have, yeah.
Because then you got Kevin Costner running around like, we got to get. It's better. They seem like
No, again,
people.
everyone looks like and
They look
feels
like
like
the
real
people.
people.
Yes.
And yeah, man, what a cool pick. Thank you, Tyler, for suggesting it.
Great
and
pick. We'll go back to Patreon for more pick. We gotta. What are we doing next?
on the show.
Yeah.
We're gonna do Payback.
Oh, Payback with Mad Mel Gibson.
With Mel Gibson,
All
because
right.
that's one you and I picked because.
Quite frankly, I think that was also on the Patreon suggestion
Oh,
list.
was it? Yeah.
Someone suggested that.
It might have been sad. Yeah,
Great suggestion.
We'll talk about Point Blank and some of the other stuff. Is that Westlake? Who wrote? No, Richard.
Yeah, who wrote those stories? We were just talking about this.
Yeah, Richard Stark.
Okay, cool.
So talk a little bit about him and some of the other. There's a couple of that character.
Yes.
There's a couple movies that had been made.
Was it Porter?
Parker, I think.
Parker. Yes. Okay, yeah, we'll get into that.
And
I'll watch
in
Point Blank again.
He's called Walker. They changed it.
Right.
And we've done this character before because the outfit when we discussed the Tarantino episode. So this will be a fun kind of way to get back into that. We'll talk about Payback. There might be some. We were looking at the director's filmography. There might be some stuff to talk about on Patreon with him. But
yeah, we'll give you the heads up.
If not, we
listeners.
can always we'll dig through that Patreon pile and pick out a movie much like Welcome to Marwen, which we're going to keep discussing on this episodes after show. So to those of you who support us on Patreon, we made a little pitch there at the beginning for you. Typically, we wait till the end, but I think it's become a really great source of film discussion on our episodes and suggestions.
I love the
and
discussion there, man.
I really do love receiving all the stuff we get and talking about it and going through it. And yeah, so $5 a month, you support us, you get bonus content, polls, that kind of stuff. So
what's that link?
That is patreon.com/almostcultclassics. To those of you who support us over there, we will see you for that episode. And to those of you who don't, we'll see you next time on the show.
Thanks for listening.